Live. This is our last meetup of the year. So we've had a really great year, and we had an amazing conference. So I don't know if you guys were all able to attend that, but our speaker tonight was played a pivotal part in that conference and making it happen. And so she's here tonight to talk to us about automating security and quality with InSpec. So I want you to put your hands together as we introduce Annie Hedgepeth.
Thanks, John. Hi, everyone. So I'm Annie Hedgepeth, and I am a cloud automation engineer at 10th Magnitude. But full disclosure, I am new to technology. And so my journey began in May of this year, actually, but I'm going to tell you about how it really began a lot sooner. And really, my introduction into technology began through my husband's company and sort of helping him through the social and political issues that he had, and just sort of being alongside him in that journey, which led me to learn about InSpec, and you're going to see why here in a minute. So, along with that, or the biggest issue that drew me in and sort of excited me was security. So as you guys probably know, there's a lot of fear sometimes in moving to the cloud, and rightfully so, right? We hear a lot about the financially motivated attacks. We hear a lot about financially motivated attacks. We hear about like Target and Home Depot and things like that in the news. And so not only just external threats, but the increasing diversity of infrastructure, right? You might have like this legacy mainframe next to I'm gonna mess with the lights again. Next to sorry, I'm totally distracted by the lights. Okay. I don't know, figure it out. I'm just kidding, okay. I'll let y'all get that situated. So anyway, these complex environments create even more compliance and liability issues. And then on top of that, you've got companies like my husband's who has strict regulatory requirements, PCI and HIPAA, CIS, things like that. And so security teams, a lot of times they get a bad rap, but there we have light again. Is it because this is difficult to see?
No, it's not difficult to see. I want to be able to see you.
Okay, got it. So security teams, they're not trying to be the blocker to everything, but it's their job to defend, right? It's their job to make sure that you don't get owned, in some great security breach. And also just the speed at which automation brings can sometimes be a bit intimidating for them. And so it's a great concern. So I like to think of it in terms, that was what I just said. So I like to think of it in terms of the film industry because that's where I come from. I was a casting director in my old career, and I am sort of old enough to remember shooting on actual film. In film school, we shot on film, and we, had it developed and all of that. And if you've ever done that, it is a pain in the butt. I mean, you have to, what you see through the viewfinder is not what you're going to get, or hopefully it's what you get, but it may not be. So you have to measure everything. You measure your depth of field, you measure your light. And then you also need, if you're shooting indoors, you need a ton of light. And then you take it to get developed, and hopefully whatever comes out of the can is what you thought you were shooting, because the chemicals have to be right, the exposure has to be right. And then you have to actually cut it and splice it together, and then you have to layer the sound on top of that, which you had to record separately. And so that's what the clapper is for. And it's a lot of work. It's very long and laborious. And you contrast that with today, and any kid with a phone can shoot some video, right? And so I don't know if this stereotype or this prejudice, I guess, is prevalent today, but it was in the 90s. In the 90s, you had your film purists, right? Like, if it's not shot on film, it's not good enough. And anything that was on video was just not respected as much because it wasn't it just didn't take as long to make, and they didn't like it as much, and yada yada. And so we can see that there's a fallacy to that, right? I mean, today there are filmmakers who are creating works of art, and they're amazing, and they're using all of the technology at their disposal to create something that, you know, these early filmmakers like Orson Welles would have never dreamed possible. And so just because it became easier to capture images on video in a digital format does not mean that expectations or quality or budgets decreased. In fact, they've all increased. And so the same holds true with IT. So you can see where I'm getting with that, right? So Azure or the cloud can increase quality and outcomes and velocity, of course, if it's done right. And so security teams within organizations are there to ensure that something of value is created and not, you know, something like a hacky cell phone video. Okay, so why go to the cloud at all, right? It's to go faster, right? We want to go faster. And so businesses want to release faster. It leads to more business outcomes, more money, etc. And, you know, there's no racking servers anymore. There's no having to have your own data center. But it's not enough just to go there, right? Because if you're still doing everything in some manual process, then, you know, you still have a big mess of manual processes. And so that leads to DevOps, right? So we automate things. And so now we have these repeatable processes, and we have configuration management, and we can have something that's predictable. So we're increasing velocity, right? But that's really not enough either, because to really round out what we need to increase velocity, we really need to be implementing security sooner. And hopefully you all agree. So it's not just, I mean, if we can go to the cloud and automate, and we're increasing our speed and velocity like that, but then you get totally owned by some data breach, or you have all of these security and compliance issues that you have to deal with after the fact and go remediate all of those, then that's not really saving you any time either. So that's why I say that security rounds out the cycle to get to velocity, because if you ignore it, then it really just kind of slows you down in the end anyway. So security is an integral part of every cloud initiative, but for the DevOps and automation to really embrace security, the developers, they need a common framework to talk to security, and security needs a common framework to tell development, or to tell developers what they need, what needs to be tested. And so hopefully by now you can see where I'm going with this. So full disclosure again, I originally gave this talk to my company, and so the next one is a little shout out to them. So I want 10th Magnitude to be known for world-class Azure implementation, accelerated by game-changing DevOps automation, and done safely with InSpec, and that's how we can increase velocity in business. So I saw this firsthand at my husband's company, and I told you about that a minute ago. He was having a difficult time already on board with him. So he was, you know, super excited about doing the DevOps and automating all of the things and going faster. And he was getting a lot of buy-in from everybody. He was having great luck. And then it's like everything came to a screeching halt, because security just, it's like every time he turned around, they were saying no, just no, 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 no. And he would come home every day and just say, like, what is the deal? Like, they just frustrated him. And he thought he was doing all this great stuff, you know, and as DevOps can be so exciting to so many people, he was just on fire for it. And they just didn't get it. they just didn't want to do anything that he wanted to do. And so I had to remind him. So this, I mean, granted, I wasn't in the office with him, but he shared, and he didn't, divulge too much, but he told me the social aspects of it. And so I got to see it from that side of it. And I had to remind him, look, security people, they see themselves as defenders, right? That's his job. I mean, if your company gets owned by some data breach, then that's his job on the line, not yours. Well, I mean, it's debatable, but anyway, that's his job. And so you really have to figure out what he needs, what he wants. And I just I listen to a lot of security podcasts and stuff, and Ben Hughes from Etsy is on a lot of them. And he always says, at the end of the day, everybody just wants to get home and watch Netflix. Like, nobody's out to get you, And so that's kind of the, what I was trying to communicate to Michael about his company. Like, this guy isn't out to get you. He has a job too, and you need to figure out what that is so that you can help him do his job as well. And at the end of the day, what he really needed was to see his compliance the same way that Michael saw his configuration management, basically. So Michael was automating everything, and he could see his infrastructure as code. And that's what, DevOps is all about, right? You see your infrastructure as code. Well, security guy needed to see compliance as code. And so that's where InSpec came in. So you're probably wondering, why the long story before, but I think it takes this understanding of the background to really grasp how powerful this simple framework is. Because if he wasn't seeing it in the same way that Michael was seeing it, then they just weren't compatible. They needed a common framework. And so Michael introduced the framework InSpec to him, and the light bulb totally clicked. It totally turned on, and it took a lot of the fear away, because suddenly he could see, okay, Michael's making this happen, and I can check everything this way, and it all looked the same. And it was something that he could understand. And so we ended up having this great dinner at our house where it was like this celebration of coming together and understanding. And it was so wonderful. And the two guys from InSpec came, also the two creators of the framework. And we just celebrated and talked about how it could, alleviate so many problems, and how security guy could not have to worry about all of these little CIS checks and compliance audits and stuff. He could automate all of that and then focus on the bigger things, just more unpredictable things or things like that. So he could automate everything that was predictable. So I told you, it inspired me so much. I loved the idea of it. And this is really key to, if you know somebody that, we all talk about how there needs to be more diversity in technology. And a lot of times people don't really think that they would enjoy technology, and it's because they didn't, I don't know, they're just not maybe getting they're not grasping the holistic view of it. Like, I got to see this at a holistic view from the political and social side of it, and that's what drew me in. And then I could get excited to actually learn the technology. So I think that that's what it's going to take to bring more people into the industry, to get more diversity in the industry, is to help people problem solve those other areas and then draw them in that way. So I say that because I started learning InSpec literally right after that dinner, and I started a blog to document all of the things that I learned. And I wanted to prove that InSpec was really written with security people in mind, because, not that I'm a security person, I have no technical background before May of 2016 at all. As far as, anyway. So I started documenting the most basic things. I had never even opened a command line before writing this blog. And so I just started with a hello world, and now I've continued to write tutorials of how to do InSpec, and they really appreciated it and liked it, and they liked that it proved that security people who are oftentimes not developers could also learn it, and it's completely accessible. And that was the really fun thing that that my website or my blog proved. And so anyway, they put my little tutorials on their website as well. And so if you want to just introduce yourself to it, you're welcome to go to either of those. So what is it? The thing I really like about InSpec is, like I said, it's accessible and simple. And so it's obviously a framework that you can scan your entire infrastructure, stands for infrastructure specification. And at the most simplistic view of security, if any of you are compliance auditors, you're welcome to correct me. But there's infrastructure scanning, there's code analysis, and there's vulnerability scanning. And so InSpec doesn't really have you covered on code analysis or vulnerabilities, but for infrastructure scanning or testing, it's really has you covered there. So basically, if you need to search a file or a directory or run a command to find out what you need to find out for your compliance or security audit, then InSpec can do that. And so automating all of these things, it sounds very simple, but when you have to, I talked to a security guy at our company the other day, and he would tell me that basically like of the year, he would just block off and open every single file or run every little command manually and just do it all. And I was like, are you serious? Because like I said, I just started all of this in May. And so all I've really known is DevOps and automation and stuff. And I was like, why? Like, why did you do that? Why didn't you automate that? And he apparently had never heard of InSpec. So, so it saves a ton of time by just automating all of these things. And like I said, once you automate all of those things, you don't have to worry about doing it manually, and you can focus on the higher level things. Open source and free, and it is owned by Chef, but it is totally platform agnostic. And it can run locally on nodes or operate remotely, like with Chef Compliance Server, but you don't need to install anything on the nodes that are being tested. You don't even really have to have configuration management to use it. Like, you can just use it completely independently. So there's not, so it's free and open source, like I said, but Chef does have a licensed version, which is called Chef Compliance, and it's basically a server, and it has all these, it has a great UI, it's got all these reports and everything that you can run, and the great thing about it is that it's got a full set of CIS profiles coded with InSpec, and it, but it's totally modifiable also, so if you have like different requirements other than CIS, or if you have to be CIS compliant, but like some of them you have to modify because they're specific for your company. They're totally modifiable. And then also it's just an easy way to, if you have like a ton of different profiles, then, which they call a profile, basically a book of tests. If you have a ton of different ones, it's an easy place to store it. And the other thing is, like, let's say, I don't know, PCI changes one of their requirements, then if you have if you have Chef Compliance, Chef Compliance scanning everything, then it will identify all of those systems that are out of compliance really quickly and help you to know which ones to remediate. And then, of course, you could remediate with Chef, because you can also use it in Chef Automate to round out your Chef offerings. And so that's kind of the big sell for that. So, like I said, you can run your tests anywhere. I don't know if I said that actually or not, but you can run them anywhere at any point in the pipeline. So whether you're in development, QA, UAT, production, they run where you want. So let's say you run it in development and you find that you're out of compliance somewhere, then fantastic, you can fix it there in development before it becomes some big time suck whenever it's in production, you know? And so, yeah, so this is shifting security left. This is just making it to where we can deal with these issues sooner before they become a real problem later. The most useful aspect of InSpec is that it enables empathy across organizations by following a process and structure that security auditors are used to. If you're a compliance auditor, you might be used to working in this. It's a PDF. You might have a PDF or a spreadsheet or a document or whatever, and it's going to be just a book of rules, a book of compliance that you have to follow this to be compliant. And so this is out of that book. So this is just one particular rule that you have to follow. So, and let's set the user and group owner to root for that file. So it tells you how to do it. It tells you what command to run, and then it tells you how to look for it, which command to run to look for it, and then which command to run to remediate it. So if there's a command, might as well automate it, right? So we want to teach the compliance auditors how to turn this into this. So as you can see here, this is totally readable. The top one, controls, CIS 1.5.1, it's exactly from the book. So when I just said that this enables empathy across organizations, so it's telling all of this metadata allows empathy for each different group. So control is allowing empathy for the auditor. It's telling him or her, don't worry, 1.5.1 is getting checked. So, and then the impact level is 0.1, not that big of a deal. So maybe if this ends up as a failure, then maybe you put this on the bottom of your remediation list or whatever. And then the title, straight from the book. And then the description, this description tells the developer, hey, you need to pay attention because it needs to be root. And sometimes it'll say, you know, something more like, if you don't do this, then this will happen or whatever. And so that allows empathy to the developer. It helps him or her to understand that security guy's not just being a jerk. He or she actually has reasons that they're checking this and that they're asking you to remediate it or whatever the case might be. And so describe file, there's the file. Its owner should be root. Its group should be root. Great, so that's checked. It's automated. And then you can run it from the command line. So that's just one, but you would have a book of these. And this is the way you run the profiles from the command line. So they can be run locally, SSH, and they can be run locally. You can host the profile locally and then SSH into a node, or you can, so there's one for Windows and there's one for Docker. So it's really versatile. And then this is what your output might look like if you're just using straight InSpec on the command line and not Chef Compliance. And it's really verbose. It can be more or less depending on what you wish. And then it's, so this is like a big long profile of tests that I ran, and it tells you exactly what it is. And so this is really great for security and compliance folks who just really need that information. So if a test fails, it's flagged in a log, and then they have something to remediate with. So I feel like InSpec opens up a lot of opportunities for people. As a consultant, as being in a cloud consultancy, I think in terms of how we can leverage it. And so, but wherever you're at, you can think of ways in which you can leverage it at your company. But for us, number one, I think that it allows us to help people to see. I say partnership because it helps us to enable companies to see that We can partner with our security teams, that they don't have to be a blocker, that we can help them to understand that we're not trying to like work around them or anything, that we want to partner with them and help them to understand this. And so we also want to show them that we want to build security into their cloud migrations from the beginning. And so I just think that InSpec helps to build trust because everybody can see the compliance as code. And then context. So when compliance is code, we can scan systems quickly for the necessary information about the state of a client's infrastructure. And if you're at a company, then you build up some profiles, you can scan, and it gives you a context of where you're at quickly instead of having to do everything manually. And then funding also, as a consultancy, I told you I think this way. A lot of security, well, this was also said at a conference I was at over the summer at ChefConf, actually. The CEO there was saying that a number one concern of a lot of most businesses right now is security. And y'all probably know that. It's just huge in the news, and it's in the tech news. And so security funding opens up also. I know of one large company who, of a friend of mine, who they want to spend money on security because they want to do all that they can to ensure that, some big data breach doesn't happen. I mean, that's a real threat. So some things that we can think about doing with, for ourselves and for our clients is just building compliance profiles and hardening cookbooks. So by building sets of profiles for people, we're just helping them to understand the state of their infrastructure, and then we can help them by coming back and remediating with hardening cookbooks. And then we can also help them set up their Chef compliance server and help them get set up to do all of that, which is extremely helpful because it's something that they can maintain on their own as well. And then also, I believe that InSpec just provides a gateway to DevOps for maybe some of our non-DevOps, non-automated type of clients. I think that InSpec is a great way to sort of introduce the concept of automation, and starting with security is a great place to start because that's like the opposite of what like DevSecOps, that sort of movement, I guess, was birthed out of them saying, hey, don't forget about security, but gosh, if you add security in before you've even started the whole DevOps transformation, then I think that's a great way to go if you could lead in that. So anyway, I think that it's a great way to sort of help people to get on that train. No pun intended. So anyway, that is all I have to say about InSpec. And now I'm going to show, I'm sorry, I mean, the part of the presentation, but now I'm going to show you a little demo and show you just how simple it is to get started with it. Okay, so first I'm going to open up Visual Studio Code. And is that big enough? It's probably not. Hold on. Can you see that? Okay. Okay, so I just wrote a really simple little control here. So I said describe file 123.txt and its content should match 123. So now, well, actually, the file doesn't exist right now. So let me run that command. Okay, so I'm going to do InSpec exec. Well, that's really small too, isn't it? How do you? What's my file called? 123RB. Is that right?
Probably be the folder.
Oh gosh, I thought I was, thank you. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. So I told y'all I've only been in technology since May, so you're gonna watch me do LS like a bazillion times. Oh, maybe not, maybe I can get it from here. Yes, didn't have to do LS once. I'm amusing myself, okay. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so we just ran that one test and it said expected nil to match 1, 2, 3. So it didn't get anything. So it's like, where is it? I don't see anything. So if another file would have been in there that had some other text, it would have said expected, whatever that was. Okay, so we're gonna add that in there. 123.txt, and we're gonna put ABC. We're gonna run it again. And see, so it says expected ABC to match. And so now we're gonna do it right. 1, 2, 3. So there we go. So there's a successful passing test. So now, if you want to, how are we on time? What time?
You got 30 minutes.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so now I'm gonna go to GitHub. And we are going to start, and we're going to call it, let's call it DevOps Live. And we're going to create that. Okay, so I'm going to teach you right now how to begin a profile. Okay, so we are going to copy that. And I'll just do it straight from that folder. I'll do InSpec, init, profile, DevOps Live. Oh, sorry, forgot to clone my repo. Git clone. There's my repo. And InSpec, init, profile, DevOps Live. And work. I didn't overwrite it. Sorry, I'm supposed to do overwrite. Okay, so you can see there that it created a directory, files, yada yada. So let's open that up. Do that later. Okay, so there's a profile. So in this controls directory, you can put as many different profiles as you want. And so like what I've done in the past is, hold on, I think I have one open. Yeah. So like this one, I was making a profile for CIS benchmarks. So I just went through that whole book and just wrote a profile for each of them. And so like for each, I don't know if they would call them chapter or section or whatever, I just did 1, 2, 3, 4. And so you can really, organize them however you want. But for the sake of this little example, let's just like copy some of these instead of writing our own. Okay, so you can see, yeah, maybe, yeah. Okay, so these again are straight out of the CIS, and I wanted to show you how there's different resources also. So this is describing service ones, file, package. On inspec.io, you can see there's a ton of different resources that you can use. Really, all it comes down to is searching a file or writing a command or running a command, but the different resources kind of help you to really pinpoint them. And so I'm going to save this, and I'm going to push it to GitHub. Oops. What did I do? Oh, shoot. Okay, what did I do wrong, y'all?
You gotta commit first.
I did.
Your public.
Oh, thank you, sorry. Okay. So I need to get that link to here. And then I'm just going to run. So I started an Azure instance earlier called InSpec presentation. So this is just, this is, oops, there's my, oops, whatever. There's an Azure terminal running. And so I'm going to run that profile from GitHub and scan my, scan that Azure node from the profile that's on GitHub. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna run InSpec, exec. There's my link. And -t, SSH, Annie at InSpec, presentation, South Central. Don't worry, I'm going to destroy this instance when I'm done. You can use keys for this too, but it was just easier for me to use the password. Okay, so let's see. Oh, dang.
Sorry, missing a colon
Where?
after the SSH.
Oh, thank you. Is that right? No. All right, let's look. InSpec exec. There's my GitHub.
Should be South Central US.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Come on. Yes. Okay. So there we go. So all of the red failed, and now we have a great list of things to remediate. And remediating with a cookbook is super simple as well. Let's see. Well, that's really all I was going to show you guys, I guess. Does anybody have any questions about it? Yes.
Could you show us what it's like to build a custom profile for, like, say, PCI compliance?
A custom profile for PCI compliance. So,
Or how do you go about configuring a custom profile like you're talking about earlier?
yes. Well, I mean, Michael, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because
So if you went back to your examples, like the example that you created, the auto-generated one.
this one?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
So your company would have to decide as you're working with your PCI folks what this list of controls needs to be for you guys.
Yeah, so like the CI,
And by the way, the controls, like, maybe 75% of them are not technical. So that one of the PCI controls, like, you have physical access control to your data center. So you can't automate that. But maybe the other one is that you have strict firewall controls into the data center, and you could set up automated profile controls for that. So there couldn't be a InSpec profile for PCI.
yeah, you kind of have to go through it and decide what you could automate and what you couldn't, right? Does
And
it,
it's also subject to interpretation as well.
and what does it look, what is the PCI, like, is it like this where they have like,
Yeah,
where they
but
just give you a bunch of PDFs and tell you to do it?
there's a PDF for it, but it's not nearly as technical. Like, this is very prescriptive, which makes it easy.
This
But,
is easier than PCI?
it's easier to interpret because they give you the
Oh,
exact.
it's
command.
really clear, I thought, but so
Like-
PCI maybe isn't this clear?
Like, for example, the PCI will say you need to control physical access to your data center, right?
That
What
opens,
is that? What do we have, a sign-in sheet? Do we have
Yeah.
an armed guard?
some of the CIS is like that too, and so I just went through and I would, like, as I was writing my controls, I would just make one that was skipped and said, you know, do this, just so that it was all there. But I would skip one that said, you know, this one we have to do this way, you know, like some other way that's not automated or whatever.
So if you can go back to your example, the way that we did this is, and this is just Ruby code, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you wanted to do a port scan. It's maybe an inefficient example, but it's an example. Maybe I have IP tables code in my recipes, right? That I'm opening certain ports and I'm closing others. And my organization has decided that we're going to not only use whatever networking protocols, but we're also going to monitor that at the server level. So you could write code that would loop through and check every single port if you wanted, right? And it's just Ruby code, so even if some of these controls can even be dynamic, you don't necessarily have to have them implicit. You can loop over them. Have a control for every single port if you wanted. There's a lot you can do. This is just like gets you started, and then you come up with the math, so to speak, and it implements that. Yeah.
And you can also use attributes to like define what you want to test. And
So do you know is Chef like giving you packages of controls, like or not these profiles? Are they is
Only
there
with
kind of
Chef
a
compliance.
competing
oh yeah, I mean like pre-made profiles that you can get off of the supermarket or whatever.
You should go to the supermarket.
Yeah, they have them on the supermarket, but
It's under tools and plugins.
where's that? Huh?
On the top, it's under tools and plugins.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, so here's some pre-made ones, but didn't make these, right? These are just community,
created.
yeah.
So could you look at the SSH hardening one? I think everyone will get it. It was down.
This one?
Yeah. So like this will kind of blow your mind that this exists already. So this is a pre-made, somebody already made this, that it goes and says, okay, you know, SSH has been properly configured on this set of servers. Right? When I see stuff like that, I mean, like this exists, like I don't have to do this on my own, I can just go have this as a starting place. So if you're doing SecOps, like this is pretty amazing. Like you'd have to pay for some like really expensive package.
Yeah, I think that's another cool thing about it. Like, you know, there is a commercial offering of this, but she just ran one command off of a remote profile that you could do it off of this, using SSH into a machine and got an answer back for free on open
Yeah.
source products.
I could do that right now, right?
It was, so it's not like open source, but you're never going to use it unless you pay somebody. It's like real open source usable stuff in my mind.
And I would imagine that this output could be tailor-made for Jenkins or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, in fact, you can output JSON and then transfer it to whatever you want. That's how they're doing it for their clients.
Oh, there we go.
Did it. There you go.
Boom. I am.
She is not.
Some issues here. But that's pretty cool, isn't it? So yeah, you could like start tomorrow with all these supermarket ones. What else?
Is anybody actively writing recipes right now, like server automation? How many of you are actively writing server automation jobs, like Chef or Puppet or do you guys? So do you guys do TDD around those in shape or form, like automatic? You write some change, you commit that change, and then that change is tested.
I think right now, no, like, we do Ansible, so what we'll put in at the end of some of our roles is just basic test to verify, like, that the changes made actually took effect.
Right.
Too formal.
Right. So I'm using, when we do a chef recipe, we use this, it used to be called server spec, but this is the InSpec stuff expanded the DSL, and we used it as a TDD. So you create this stuff, you write this stuff before you go write the recipe. So you might have a control that says some certain program is installed, and then you might add how that program is secured. So is that service running? Is it, are the configuration files properly owned by root? Like what are all the things I need to be worried about as I install this particular program on my server, right? And so we'll write that, and then we'll go make the code change, and then we'll commit that. And then just like any other application, you have, Jenkins or your continuous integration environment running InSpecs against a test server that's spun up. The chef run is done from beginning to end, which is great. You don't have to sit there and wait for that. And then it'll run an inspect against it and give you a result, and it'll destroy the server, right?
We're doing a test
have that
kitchen.
always running in the background, testing your kind of instance builds, and know that the way that you intend. So now somebody else goes and makes a change to the permissions in the recipe. They write a permission change. Wow, now the red light goes off, and you know that something dreadful has happened to your recipe.
Yeah, and we've expanded that too, which I think is a cool thing about this profile concept is, that initially lives inside of the cookbook or whatever you're using, but you can put that in its own profile. When you're in production, after you do a major change, you can run that profile and ensure that everything is still good. And there's a workflow amongst our non-automation focused operations engineers, operations people, where they do a change and then they think, okay, now I need to go check stuff. They're going to go like open up IIS or do whatever it is they do. And then the message we're sending them now with these is, let's have this profile that tells you all those things. You can still have that safety net feeling, but then that profile that is your safety net feeling that you're using is from a testing standpoint goes all the way left to development to cookbook authors doing it.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
To me, it was enough just to not have to go to individual servers and do PSEF and see if some certain process was running on some certain port. To have that comfort that whatever I intended the infrastructure to be doing through my chef recipes was actually taking place, and to have that troubleshoot that's really painful. And normally when something's going wrong, it's because of something in here is not So it also really minimizes troubleshooting time. If you have this kind of information telling you, what's going on, you like know the instance the change is made, like what is shifted,
Yeah.
I don't know how I would do it without it now.
So are there any security or compliance people here? No? Do y'all have a good working rapport with them? Anybody? Anyone like to share? What do you know what they want from you guys out of compliance? What they need from y'all? For
I
compliance?
understand that when we started having our conversations with security in Heartland, I work here in Heartland. Putting stuff in the cloud, that first thing was, this is how we do it on-prem. And we have an APC environment, so everything else because we can actually use our services. So they said, here's our stack on cloud. Here are all the guidelines, here are all the must-haves, the mandates. Go ahead and replicate them exactly as it's on the cloud. That's a starting point. It's a negotiation, 2 to 3 months, slowly getting we use Azure, getting the Azure consultants and educating them through the process. You don't need all these things. You need some of them, and there are different ways to do it. There are different tool sets. It's getting them to agree. So it's a negotiation process. That was my experience.
Yeah.
We start off from, hey, we want it exactly like this. I'll tell you something, Rich. I think nobody from security is here.
It's only us and you.
Yeah, broadcasting lines.
We can turn it off.
This is on.
You can speak in code. Yeah.
When I worked in the data side, here warehousing the data platforms. They wanted to route all the incoming traffic into our data center and then send it to them.
Yeah, that's typical.
And we said, we are defeating the whole purpose. That's what we started.
Yeah.
Just to give you a case.
No, so we find the same thing with enterprise, like enterprise customers need that extra level of comfort, and this is why this exists, right? But I think there's a reality though that the things on the cloud, like IPs and your network topography, can change much more rapidly. So it's much harder to attack something that's moving rather than something that is very permanent. So I think it makes sense that you're not, Capital One has moved to AWS Solo Cloud, and a lot of people think will follow because as there's tools available like this, and you realize how quickly things can change, then that fear of this permanent on-premise environment being more secure, that becomes a FUD, that just becomes uncertainty and doubt around what the cloud is.
Yeah, and it's interesting to watch their perception change where they feel like when they start hearing cloud, they feel like they're the safe option and cloud is the dangerous option. And then when you show them this, all of a sudden cloud is the safe option and they're the dangerous option. And that's another interesting strategy you can use with this if you're in an environment that does not have a buy-in for automation, is run some of these scans on your production infrastructure and show people whether or not you are compliant with what everyone is saying. If you're not using automation, then the answer is probably you're not compliant. People are SSHing into machines running random commands. It's by definition not compliant to what somebody said.
I think they get it. I think it's more of a, we know what we can borrow. It's comfort level.
It's about control.
It's about control.
This is what they've been doing, they've been doing it for a long time, and they don't want to let go of it. Or do it different.
It's a little bit of that, but it's also, hey, we know how to control this. We know how to measure this, which they feel they lost it.
That's why the central DSL element of an InSpec profile is control.
Yeah, but it's also not, it's also we know how to not change this. that the comfort is artificial, because there's a much slower rate of change for an on-premise environment. And there's some, like, I feel good about the fact that these certain factors of this thing don't change, but that becomes the reason why it doesn't move quickly either.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything else? Any other sad stories of security? All right, cool. Well, I guess that's it for me. Thank y'all all for being here. I really appreciate it. Yeah.